Earlier, back in the fall, we had a discussion at the city council level about this opportunity, this once-in-a-generation opportunity to deploy substantial resources to strategic, long-term, opportunity-creating activities. And in that discussion, we discussed objectives that relate broadly to two themes. And that's what you see reflected along the walls, and we will discuss them some today. The first is a set of concerns related to growing and strengthening Spartanburg families, things like educational attainment, talent and capacity development and retention, economic mobility, all of those related concerns. And then a number of themes that relate to healthy and strong and stable neighborhoods, which include safe and accessible housing, new housing construction, and community facilities and community anchors and amenities that support well-being in this community. So again, a very broad scope for discussion today. There were a set of process values, I guess you could call them, that were also laid out in that discussion, and that I believe reflect the will of the council in asking for your input here. And so those process values are that we are to take a collaborative partnership approach to this work. This is not a city team that thinks about city activities and resources alone. We like to work in deep partnership with a number of community organizations and institutions that grows regularly. That includes Spartanburg Housing, that includes the Mary Black Foundation, that includes United Way of the Piedmont, that includes Spartanburg Academic Movement. There are countless other organizations and institutions that are represented here that work in deep partnership with the city in addressing these broad goals and themes. And so one of the things we want to do is infuse into this discussion broad thinking about collaborating and partnering. We want to seek, as the legislation defines, long-term generational impact. There are certain types of activities and investments that have immediate impacts, and then there's some that take, frankly, decades to reach their full impact. And this is, in our hope, more in the latter category, to think long-term. We want to act on evidence and data. And you will see, and part of what we'll spend our time together on is looking at some data that's on the easels and the walls around this room about some of these concerns. We want data and evidence to inform this process. And we want to identify clear outcomes. And there is a distinction that will be clear as we work through this between identifying issues and concerns and identifying outcomes related to those issues and concerns. So we want to challenge ourselves today to identify outcomes. And we want to work through that collaborative partnership to leverage our resources. There are folks in this community and beyond this community who share concern about the same things we'll discuss today. And so we want to approach our local decisions and the city-based decisions with an eye towards how can we leverage and stretch resources with community service agency partners, philanthropic entities, and others to take these one-time public dollars and leverage them for greater impact. And of course, as reflected in today's work, we want to build on the input we will receive today and in subsequent discussions. And certainly, we recognize that there's been a great deal of work in strategic planning about community issues from a number of fronts, initiated in a number of different ways. That work has and should continue to inform these discussions, so that in some cases, in some issues, we're not reinventing an approach. We are trying to accelerate an approach that's been already the beneficiary of a great deal of work and collaboration.
It's great to be here with you this afternoon. Just want to take a moment to say what my role will be today. As facilitator, I don't join you as an expert in ARPA. What I join you in is the role of community in getting their ideals up on the board and making your voices and getting your voices heard. So my primary work today with you is to really ensure that you have the opportunity to give your input on how this, as Chris has said, I want to say once in a lifetime, but I gotta think that if this works out well, that there'll be more money flowing from other places. So I'm not gonna say a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm gonna say the beginning opportunity to keep money flowing into communities and with an approach to fix the systems that are not working so well, right? And so what we're going to do today is, while you're sitting now, I'm hoping that you're going to be spending most of your time on your feet, either looking at data, putting ideas up, and then taking those ideas and trying to make sense of them, okay? So we're going to have opportunities to do that, or you're going to have opportunities. I always use the we word because whatever community I come in, I always feel like I'm a part of it, but actually this is your work to do. And I'm just going to help you to be able to do that work and to take this first step in getting your ideals up. Because as Chris and the mayor said, this won't be the last step. So what I'm hoping is that you all will get your ideals up on the boards, that you'll make some sense of it, and then you'll be brought back together at some other times to really go deep in the discussion, okay? We have brought some data into the room for you to look at. Now, data does not take the place of your lived experience. The ideal is that it adds to what you may be bringing into the room. So oftentimes when I go into the rooms, I am always thinking about environmental justice and health equity. But oftentimes I can look at other data and see how something that's happening in housing might also, if I can strengthen that leg of the system, it might also contribute to health equity or social justice, environmental justice, etc. So I invite you not only to look at the data that might be relevant to the issue that you're bringing into the room, but to all the data that is in the room. And the heart of the meeting is for you all to begin to make suggestions as to how you think this money should be utilized or targeted. And on your tables, you'll see a set of Post-its. You might have your own pens, but if you don't, there are some on the tables and there's some empty tables over here where there's also some pens. And what we're asking you to do is that there are, I call them flip chart pages around the room, on the wall. They cover education, housing, community facilities, workforce, and miscellaneous, right? Miscellaneous not because it's not important. It's just because I couldn't come up with every single category, right? And so you might have ideals around something that you feel doesn't fit into education or housing or community facilities or workforce, but you have an ideal and you want to make sure that it gets up on the board.
Angela, thank you. We appreciate that very much. And short-term next steps, we're going to compile and collapse into a document all of the post-its. And one of the reasons why we had you register via Eventbrite is that it allows us to grab email addresses. So we can follow up with an email of the content that we received today. And then, as was indicated, we're going to schedule additional sessions that will be similar in nature. All of that will be shared transparently, that we hear there, and we'll try to develop some themes. And then, frankly, in the big picture, to Evelyn's question, these dollars will ultimately be appropriated by City Council sometime over the next 15 months or so. There's a little bit of flexibility written into there's no urgency on when and how the appropriations happen, but they will be formally appropriated by City Council. So what we will try to do at the staff level is take these themes and this content, reflect it back to the community, then work with, many of y'all have heard me say this before, we work, a lot of the things that the city of Spartanburg is able to be a component of in this community happen through the actions of various community partners, whether that's a neighborhood association or a major organization, because they're not carried out directly by city staff, they're carried out in partnership. So one of the things we want to do is engage community partners in what we've heard and see where the opportunities and synergies lie. There may be things that work with existing efforts that resonate with these themes. Try to aggregate those into some options and put those options publicly before the community and the City Council to choose from. So that's our task at the staff level. What we'd ask of you all is to stay engaged in that, to be communicating your thoughts on the themes that have emerged today and what happens in other sessions, and be attentive to the process that the City Council will go through publicly and give them your feedback and input at every step of the way. So that's our ask. There's no definitive time schedule. Except for the fact that we will make the appropriations by the end of calendar year 2023, because that's what the federal legislation requires. But what we do between then will be, we'll move at the pace of some degree of consensus, is what we'll try to do there. Certainly welcome any questions. This is a unique opportunity. It's a unique time. It doesn't align specifically with anything the city's ever done before. So we're learning together, and you all have already given a couple hours to this process. We're grateful for that. But I'd ask you to stay engaged, because from where we are with, ideas, some very specific, some very generalized, to an actual appropriation plan, there's a whole lot of work to do along that way. And its quality will only be as good as our collective energy that we put to it. So please stay engaged. Thank you for sharing your emails with us, and we'll try to use that as a primary tool for follow-up.